有此阵，还要杀我？去吧！电脑的实力更是心灵无限，打不过，根本打不过。嚣张！
Hello guys, welcome to the Alrasta channel to discuss and explain the exciting storyline of your favorite series, SwallowedStar episode 227. In the previous episode, Firestone Master expressed his deep gratitude to Luofeng for saving his life from the brink of death. Meanwhile, Yong Master met up with his lover, Jiayu Master, who was then instantly killed by an energy explosion trap while trying to breach the protective layer of an ancient treasure in the Tilted Peak realm. Dozens of years after that incident, Luofeng explored the same water territory and felt a strong resonance from his Shiwu wings. He used his Mosha clone to scout and penetrate the deadly protective light layer, successfully catching a glimpse of giant wings covered in blades of light behind a gap in the 9th layer. But before he could figure out how to grab them, a Yong Master suddenly showed up and ambushed him. During the fierce battle that broke out, Luofeng was initially pushed back by his enemy's physical strength, but he then summoned his Blood Cloud Palace Master identity to counterattack, instantly activating his domain technique and the I am the Universe technique to trap Yong Master in a deadly combo attack. So what happens next? Alright, without further ado, let's dive right into the story. When the first combined attack from Blood Cloud Palace Master and Luofeng hit Yong Master simultaneously, he was left completely confused trying to defend against two powerful fighters at the exact same time. After taking some close-range hits, Yong Master managed to activate a special ability unique to the Divine Eye race. This move allowed him to fire long-range light attacks from the Divine Eye floating behind his back. The attack was definitely strong, but it could only fire in one direction. So, Luofeng took advantage of this to strike the target while he was busy focusing on Blood Cloud Palace Master. Luofeng's slash cleanly severed Yong Master's left arm, though it eventually grew back. Moving on to the next move, Luofeng, who was fighting with his domain technique active, circled around Yong Master at lightning speed. When the enemy's attention was diverted, Blood Cloud Palace Master unleashed a strike that served as a second distraction. This gave Luofeng the perfect opening to land a slash right into Yong Master's body, splitting him straight in two. Unfortunately, Yong Master's insane regeneration meant his body just reconnected itself. The enemy was looking pretty pathetic and battered at this point from getting ganged up on by two opponents at once. Yong Master took hit after hit, punches, kicks, and thrusts that he simply couldn't dodge or parry. While continuing to land his attacks, Luofeng taunted that Yong Master had shown up so arrogantly with the intent to kill, but too bad for him, it was nothing but a pipe dream. Ultimately, the close-range slashes from both fighters chopped off two of Yong Master's arms and one of his legs. But once again, the severed limbs quickly reattached themselves. From this fight, Yong Master realized that when Luofeng used the boost from his domain power, he possessed strength on par with a Tier 4 Universe Master. Meanwhile, Blood Cloud Palace Master's power was at Tier 5. After taking several brutal hits from the two figures in front of him, Yong Master realized he had zero chance of winning. This guy from the Divine Eye race, who were rumored to love fighting to the death, eventually chose to tuck tail and run. Meanwhile, Luofeng didn't bother chasing him since Yong Master was pretty much unkillable. Instead of going after him, it made more sense to continue hunting for the treasure he hadn't secured yet. Yong Master, who fled mid-battle after taking some pretty heavy damage, finally made it back to his base to recover. He was absolutely furious. He had already activated a spatial blockade beforehand. So how on earth did Blood Cloud Palace Master suddenly appear out of nowhere? Yong Master assumed that the powerful being might have been hiding in Luofeng's world ring right from the start. But the weird part was, even if the two of them had a great relationship, it was unlikely they'd constantly trust each other with their lives. He started to wonder if the infamous Blood Cloud Palace Master was actually from the human race too. But sorry guys, Yong Master's guess was totally off the mark. In this Donghua version, it seems Yong Master didn't spread the rumor because his pride was utterly crushed by Luofeng. One thing was for sure though, If he ever crossed paths with Luofeng again, Yong Master wouldn't let him get out alive. Back to Luofeng, who was continuing his journey toward the location of the winged treasure. This time, Luofeng entered using his human body and had just passed the second layer's light curtain. Luofeng went in there intentionally because the place was spacious, making it hard for anyone else to find him, and it was the perfect hideout spot. During this particular exploration, Luofeng had a gut feeling. He was convinced that once he got his hands on that treasure, his Shiwu wings would definitely evolve and become even stronger. Blood Cloud Palace Master then brought out the Star Tower, expanding it from a tiny size to massive proportions. After that, Luofeng entered the Star Tower and used it as his ride to reach his destination, as well as a shield to protect him when entering the 9th layer's light curtain. Meanwhile, the Golden Horned Beast, transformed into the Blood Cloud Palace Master, stood guard around the 2nd layer area to make sure no enemies would interrupt while Luofeng tried to retrieve the treasure. Once everything was ready, Luofeng set off piloting the Star Tower. Long story short, he safely passed through the light curtains of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th layers. Since Luofeng was now carrying all his gear, he absolutely couldn't afford to make a wrong move. As he pushed through layer after layer, the Shiwu wings on his back vibrated more and more violently. This meant the treasure he was after was getting closer. Finally, Luofeng reached the 9th layer. Filled with confidence, Luofeng drove the Star Tower, which boasted protection on par with power above a true god, straight into it. After breaching the light curtain, it suddenly felt like space and time stopped for a moment. When time resumed, Luofeng was shocked by an endlessly massive barrage of light blades, making the entire space inside the Star Tower shake violently. He had barely been inside for a second before he was forced to retreat. Babata immediately felt dizzy after being hit by the shockwaves of the attacks in the 9th layer. Fortunately, Luofeng was protected by the Star Tower, preventing his body from instantly turning to dust upon entering the layer. Even with the countless, high-intensity light blade attacks targeting the Star Tower's walls, the vibration effects were quickly absorbed. However, the main issue was that the barrage of impacts was just too dense, especially given how huge the Star Tower was. No matter how strong Luofeng's mental power was, he still couldn't control the Star Tower to move forward normally. But then, Luofeng suddenly got an idea. Since the main problem was size, he shrank the Star Tower until it was small, then very small, and then super tiny. Ultimately, the Star Tower became the size of a speck of dust, which Babata then piloted straight into the 9th layer. Once inside, Luofeng's method proved to be incredibly reliable. With a size comparable to a dust speck, the incoming massive light blade attacks felt much sparser and easier to dodge. Even though it was incredibly small, the Star Tower could still move incredibly fast. In just a single month, Luofeng had flown over 5 light years while constantly dodging those slashing attacks. Unfortunately, the distance to the treasure was still pretty far and time-consuming. Meanwhile, the closer Luofeng got to his prize, the more he realized that the object he'd seen earlier wasn't just a big, glowing golden wing. It was actually a giant wing of light formed from countless light blades clumped around it, which just made it look like a giant wing from a distance. Not long after, Babata popped out and told Luofeng to look a bit closer. At the core of that giant wing was a smaller pair of white wings. That pair of white wings was the very core power source generating this massive number of light blades. Feeling a bit impatient, Luofeng immediately sped up the Star Tower. The closer they got, Luofeng could finally clearly see a physical, real white wing about 100 meters in size with a wide span. Its appearance was quite bizarre because there were bloodstains and an unnatural-looking red eye on it. As the distance closed to 100,000 kilometers, a massive wave of mental energy suddenly slammed into Luofeng's consciousness, furiously telling him to leave. The anger stemmed from that red eye, demanding Luofeng get out of there immediately. The red eye released a mental pressure so intense it made Luofeng's soul tremble, throwing him slightly off balance as it relentlessly told him to scram. If Luofeng didn't leave, he would be killed. Even though it made Luofeng tremble, the mental attack from the white wing actually felt pretty hollow. Sure, the mental strike was terrifying, but it was essentially a paper tiger. It looked scary, but it didn't have any real capability to kill Luofeng. Realizing this, Luofeng began to slow down the Star Tower. Despite moving slowly, the Star Tower kept inching forward while dodging every incoming light blade. And so, the journey brought him to nearly 20,000 kilometers away from the white wing. Throughout the whole trip, he kept hearing all sorts of curses from the wing, constantly spewing threatening words and trying to force Luofeng to leave if he didn't want to die. With a calm tone, Luofeng replied that if a talking wing could actually kill him, it would have done so right from the start. But the proof was in the pudding. Luofeng was still perfectly fine. As he closed in on the 10,000-kilometer mark, the wing spammed even more repetitive, threat-filled sentences at him. Hearing the repetitive phrases from the wing made Babata's ears itch, so she popped out and commented that whatever creature was in that wing didn't seem too bright. In fact, even the high-level monsters on Earth were way smarter than it. However, the weird part for Luofeng was that despite its terribly low intelligence, its mental strength was astonishingly huge. The light blades it unleashed were incredibly powerful and seemingly endless. This made Luofeng curious about what kind of creature was actually talking to him. As the gap between Luofeng and the wing got closer, from 5,000 kilometers to 3,000 kilometers, and hitting the 800-kilometer mark from the target, the shocks Luofeng took were just as massive. The soul-shaking mental attacks felt like they were blanketing the entire area. As the distance narrowed from 400 kilometers to 200 kilometers, Luofeng began to feel the mental pressure intensifying. Babata, noticing this, asked if they should stop for a bit before pressing on. Since he felt he could still handle it, Luofeng ordered her to keep moving forward. When the distance dropped below 100 kilometers, the mental attack from the wing grew even stronger, to the point where it could even attack using illusions. The red eye seemed to exert an immense pressure, constantly threatening Luofeng to get out of there right away. Just as the distance hit 18 kilometers, Luofeng, who couldn't handle the pressure anymore, immediately ordered the Star Tower to halt. That point was the absolute limit of Luofeng's capabilities, and he just couldn't bear to get any closer to the treasure, which was now crystal clear just 16 kilometers away. Half a year went by. That was the time Luofeng needed to fully recover. However, thanks to the mental pressure forging him, he also reaped some massive benefits. Luofeng could now see that there were scars on the surface of the wing. On top of that, Luofeng was amazed. A treasure capable of unleashing endless light blades all around it carried such terrifying power that every single blade packed an attack on par with a true god. After seeing the slashes and bloodstains on the white wing, Luofeng was super curious about how a treasure that powerful could even get damaged. According to Babata's analysis, the only ones capable of leaving a scar on a treasure that strong were likely the mysterious figures of the two Void True God level warriors who held the titles of the two Holy Land creators. It was highly likely that a massive event had befallen the White Wing's owner in the past. But for now, the absolute priority was figuring out how to get their hands on that White Wing first. Luofeng then tried to get closer by releasing his divine power, forming a golden body. However, with just a light flick, the attack was completely obliterated by the blood-stained, scarred White Wing. Since his divine power was a bust, Luofeng released golden chains from the Star Tower that could stretch for tens of kilometers. He used them to snare and pull the White Wing closer to him. But once the golden chains hooked on, the wing didn't budge an inch when he pulled. When Luofeng tried to pull it again, he simultaneously enlarged the Star Tower to thousands of kilometers in size. However, the White Wing was insanely strong. It didn't show the slightest movement even when being dragged by the Star Tower's full power. Luofeng was also heavily shaken when the wing forcibly broke free from the Star Tower's golden chains, pushing him back a bit. For some extra context, the threatening voice Luofeng had been hearing sounded a lot like someone gripped by fear. Right then, Luofeng suddenly heard a completely different voice from the one that had been constantly telling him to leave from the start. This new voice sounded much calmer, not at all like someone who was scared, and the entity then physically revealed itself, introducing itself as the treasure spirit of the White Wing. The spirit looked like a bald old man with a devious face. This was the Wing Spirit's form. Smiling cynically, he admitted he hadn't expected there to be another component of the Shiwu Wing still out there. Hearing this, Luofeng was shocked that the spirit in front of him could sense the wings he had. The Wing Spirit then shared that back in the day, he had followed his master into a massive battle, which resulted in his master's death and the White Wing getting damaged. That tragic event also led to the destruction of the Wing's original spirit. As for this bald old guy, he was just a newly reincarnated spirit who could only recall fragmented memories of that great ancient battle. Up until now, he had always assumed he was the only remaining entity. He also felt very confident that Luofeng had already realized the White Wing spirit was the true core source of the Shiwu Wings. Furthermore, he explained that he had been trapped in that place for a ridiculously long time. so long that it couldn't even be counted anymore. Because of the scars on his body and the presence of the bloodstains radiating horrifying power, the winged spirit was completely unable to break free and had been constantly imprisoned there. The white winged spirit then told Luofeng that the mental pressure constantly hammering him earlier actually came from those bloodstains. Then he offered Luofeng a deal to cooperate. If Luofeng was willing to help him, the white winged spirit would be able to repair himself while also purging the clinging bloodstains. However, the bloodstain, whose voice sounded terrified, immediately told Luofeng never to listen to a word the bald creature in front of him said. It claimed the old man was a fraud intending to kill Luofeng. This warning was repeated over and over, and suddenly, the white winged spirit started looking genuinely panicked and scared. The winged spirit tried to persuade Luofeng by offering various enticing deals and valuable treasures to repair himself, promising to acknowledge Luofeng as his master in return. But the voice from the bloodstain forcibly dragged the winged spirit back to where the white wing was. The bloodstain stubbornly insisted that the winged spirit was a liar harboring evil intentions to murder Luofeng. On the flip side, the winged spirit defended himself, saying that it was actually the bloodstain that was terrified of being annihilated. That was the real reason it kept telling Luofeng to get out of there over and over. Because the explanations from the two entities completely contradicted each other, Luofeng finally ordered the white winged spirit to acknowledge him as his master right then and there. Only after that condition was met would Luofeng be willing to help. However, the white winged spirit refused, making the excuse that it wasn't that he didn't want to obey, but the requirements for acknowledging a master for him were extremely strict. He mentioned that his future master had to have a perfect gene level first. Hearing that condition, Luofeng casually replied that he did indeed have perfect genes, but the sly bald old man immediately deflected, stating that an incredibly strong level of mental power or willpower was also required if Luofeng wanted to be his master. He judged that the willpower of a universe master like Luofeng just wasn't enough to meet that standard at the moment. Deep down, Luofeng had initially believed him a bit, but because the sly old man was asking for so many conditions and his offer seemed fishy, Luofeng figured this was all just a trick. Meanwhile, sensing that Luofeng didn't trust him, the white winged spirit gave him an out, saying Luofeng didn't need to make a rushed decision and could take his time mulling over the offer. Luofeng basically felt no need to rush his next move anyway. His thought process was simple. If the creature really did have evil intentions to trap him, it eventually wouldn't be able to hold its patience much longer. Because of that, Luofeng decided to just chill inside the Star Tower for a good while. He made this choice to use his downtime to keep tempering his mental strength and willpower, while also watching and waiting to see what other tricks the sly bald old man would pull. 6 years later, the gap between the Star Tower and the White Wing had narrowed to just 1 kilometer. Right at that moment, Luofeng suddenly heard a voice he had absolutely never heard before. The voice felt completely foreign to his ears, and its origin wasn't too clear either. After listening to it more carefully, it turned out the voice, which could only mumble the word, "I was coming from the Shi-Wu wings currently equipped on Luofeng's back." It seemed Luofeng's Shi-Wu wings had just birthed a brand new guardian spirit. Since the spirit was basically a newborn, its intelligence level wasn't very high yet, meaning she didn't even have the capability to speak fluently. Facing this situation, Babata took the initiative to give it private tutoring sessions, aiming to help Luofeng's Shi-Wu wing spirit gain some intelligence ASAP. During the early stages of its learning, Luofeng's wing spirit was taught various basic skills, including reading, writing, counting, and how to communicate with others. Babata even set up a sort of proficiency exam for it. To make the classroom vibe a bit more lively, Atuka and the capybara joined in on the studying too. But apparently, the capybara was already way too smart for that, so it was better off just taking a nap, guys. After successfully passing the exam with flying colors and meeting Babata's passing standard, the Shi-Wu wing spirit was finally starting to speak. Even though it still stuttered a bit, the spirit began showing some courage to express its desires, saying it wanted to get out of there immediately. It also mentioned that it had a huge craving to eat the light source radiating from the core of the Shi-Wu wings. Babata then went on to explain the fact that the Shi-Wu wings inherently had a total of 6 pairs of wings. The component Luofeng had just stumbled upon was merely the core source, which served the vital function of acting as a storage unit for divine power. The previous owner of the fully complete version of the Shi-Wu wings was an entity who, in their time, possessed an absurdly massive level of power. The ridiculously abundant divine power they managed to wield back then was acquired by using the light source portion, acting as the core of this white wing as a medium. This was exactly the reason why the pair of white wings currently in front of Luofeng seemed to harbor such unimaginably terrifying power. It was purely because this component directly served as the main vessel for holding divine power. Then what happened next? Alright, thanks for watching until the very end, and don't forget to keep supporting this channel by leaving a comment, dropping a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Okay, bye.
我们的一颗沙粒。
会死